early on, I felt like I always had this conversation with God. Like, God, I never felt called to be a typical pastor, and it just felt like such a frustration. I wanted to do a good job. And I think that's important to state. It wasn't that I didn't want to do it because I didn't care about people. It was that I wanted to do a good job, and I felt like that I wasn't going to fit that model. But what you're going to see for the next 4 weeks, to me, is a moment of vision. It's almost like stepping into the promised land. Jacob flew down to be able to capture it. We had the people in the room that I've been trying to get to come to Oregon, but they're busy and they've got lives and stuff that they're doing. We met some people that are just, the stories are unbelievable. And like I said, I don't even know how to tell you to prepare for where we're going. I'm excited for you guys to get to hear it. I'll tell you a little bit about each individual story, but this is going to be the thing that you're going to hear for 4 weeks in a row as we go through what, I don't even know what we're calling it yet. Maybe like the evolution of a sermon. Maybe it's the, I don't know, maybe kind of a hybrid between a podcast and a sermon. I'm actually happy that it doesn't have a name, because it means it's something that we haven't seen over and over and over again. I will say this, we sat in the room yesterday and there was just this awe and sort of this silence where everybody's sort of looking at each other like, man, you feel it. You feel what God is doing in the room with these people and with these people that love Jesus. And so I'm so excited that we now have a method or a means by which we can share those private, intimate moments, these Jesus moments that go into the depth of what his word says and what it looks like played out in people's lives. And I'm so grateful that we were able to capture that in a way that now can be put in front of people, that I know this. I know there's going to be people every single week that find themselves in the stories that you're going to hear over the next 4 weeks. I know I've said this about everybody that spoke so far, but it has really been true. Justin Davis has become like a brother to me. You know, we can go 3 or 4 or 5 months and not talk and pick up the phone and start right back where we left off. We get to it kind of at the end. He actually made the national finals with Clay O'Brien Cooper. I mean, he's had a cool career, and you almost forget that that's part of his story, because that guy loves Jesus. He loves people. He's been through a season that is just absolutely gut-wrenching. And so when you listen to Justin talk about everything that God's brought him through and who he was at the beginning and who he is now, I can't wait for you guys to get to walk through this process and imagine what it's like being in his position, and to hear him say the things that he said that go so against what the world would say. The world would say that struggling should cause distrust in God, and it did the exact opposite. And so I mean, to say thank you to Justin doesn't begin to say it, for bringing him and his wife up and letting us sort of peek in on what God's doing in their lives.
It's like close. I'm gonna end up going whack. Yeah, because I talk with my
I'll try to make it formal and I'll church it up.
Do you know me at all? Hello, brother Steve. Welcome to my podcast.
Welcome to, yeah. Like,
Hi, welcome to my YouTube page.
There's got to be more.
I have been looking forward to this since before I even knew what this would look like. Got Justin Davis. We're in the middle of a series of what does a sermon even mean? The conversation, the back and forth. The series being, you know, fertile soil. What does it look like to be fertile soil? And I'm going to read it real quick, and then Justin will jump into it. It's been the same verse for the entire month. Matthew 13, verse 1, it says, that same day Jesus went out of the house. By now people are probably like saying it out loud. They've been hearing it so much. Sat by the lake. Such large crowds gathered around him, and he got into a boat and sat in it while all the people stood on the shore. Then he told them many things in parables, saying, a farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell along rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched and they withered because they had no root. Other seed fell among thorns, which grew up and choked out the plants. Still other seed fell on good soil, where it produced a crop, 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. Whoever has ears to hear, let him hear. To catch you guys up real quick, Justin Davis from Madisonville, Texas. You might recognize him as a famous team roper. I would say over the last probably 3 or 4 years, it was felt like a brother connection. Every time we talk, it's just this deep, soulful thing that is just a rare thing to find. And we kind of got to know each other right about the time life was getting ready to change. The timing of that was so. I mean, it feels ordained. Yeah. But I've known you. Like going all the way back to like the high school rodeo days. Yeah. I mean, people that you just kind of, if you don't know how Texas works, Texas has 10 regions in the high school deal. And so you can be in the same state and know of somebody, not know them. So it's kind of a casual thing. In 2000, were you rodeoing with Trey was it 2015?
It was.
I think it was the summer right before Casey's deal
It
started.
was 2014. No, yeah, 2015. That's right. Yeah, 2015, and we came up there to the church.
And you guys were there. And I think that's kind of where,
We started talking a lot more from that moment. And it's so funny, I've known Randy, your uncle, forever, from little kid, and he's just been that one of those guys for me that has guided me and directed me and loved on me, through my life. And it's crazy in life. You just don't put people together. And at that moment when I saw you up there, I was like, how did I never not put that together that you were his nephew? And that's at that moment I did. Yeah. So I never told you that, but that's funny.
So one of the it feels like the theme of my spiritual life right now is when I say fertility, what I mean is we've had family members that have gone through fertility issues, because something about the biology of it is, as life begins to form in the womb, that the host body has to make a choice for sacrifice.
Yeah.
The sacrifice is a choice that says, at my discomfort, I'm going to create new life. And with our family that we're talking about, like we said, well, you suffered enough, you've gone through enough, you've been through all this suffering that they were choosing. And like to us, we're like, no, you just, it's okay. Just, and it resulted in twins that we know now that we just love. And now here's what kind of has sparked the clarity, is that the fertility issue was a what, but now the process became a who, because we got our little nephews that we love so much. Now we look at it and we go, that was worth it. Mm-hmm. We're grateful that they didn't sort of like pull up when we said they should have pulled up, or for their sake. And how many opportunities as Christ followers that we miss because suffering is something we are so adverse to. We pull away from suffering,
right,
unless we can understand or sort of connect the dots on where it's going. I talked to Casey last week, but from a husband's perspective, I'm listening to her talk and I can't help it. It's like I'm jumping to your position, because it is hard in different ways, in a different way.
Yeah, it's you can only see things from your own perspective. It's you try to imagine people, what like for me is, I tried to imagine what Casey's going through in so many instances in her battle, and I can't get there. You know what I'm saying? I can imagine what it could be like, and we've had that discussion lots of times where, like she would say, you can't feel what I feel. You don't know the feeling I have, and I don't. But from my perspective, I see the pain of a person that I love so much going through the battle that they're going through, and seeing, how she's dealing with things, and sometimes it's progress and sometimes it's setbacks, but through that, I have what I feel and my perspective of what she's gone through, and it's unbelievable to witness what God's creation can take on. That
we're capable of more than what we would assume.
Yeah,
you go through it and you find depth, and that to me in that soil. When we start talking about soil, what it's talking about is the depth for roots.
Yeah,
and as people, I think if given a choice, we choose the shallow dirt.
Well, sure.
We choose to be the shallow soil if we get a choice, because it's easier. It doesn't cost as much. It doesn't come with suffering. It doesn't come with sacrifice. And so it almost feels like sometimes we get thrust, from where you guys have been, you almost get thrust into suffering and have to retroactively decide, like, okay, well then what would that look like? Okay, we're in it. I mean, we didn't choose this.
Yeah.
And in our conversations, that's been the thing that's kind of almost come to the surface over the last 4 or 5 years, is the depth of Jesus, the depth of the identity of Jesus that broke open. I mean, you look in the Word, and we talked about it, but the breaking always brought new life.
Yes.
Where did that start?
And new perspective, and so, I mean, if we went back just a little bit, I grew up in an amazing Christian home. My parents love me, like I think that God loves Jesus, and so through my upbringing, I felt like everything was pretty easy, and moving into life and going through struggles, you know, from losses of businesses and relationships. And I mean, there's so many things that we go through in life, and you gain new perspective out of each one of those. Yeah. Going through all those things, you know, brings you to a place where you have a better understanding, because you have a better understanding of who God is, and his purpose is not our purpose. Our purpose.
That's a gut-wrenching moment when a person has to decide, am I going to lean in to the story that God's telling, or am I going to bury down and try to stay loyal to this story that I'm trying to tell? Yeah. I mean, that feels like a ripping apart moment.
That's a place where you realize that you don't have control of this life. You know, like
what a disappointing discovery that turns out to be.
I thought I was going to be able to control. I was going to be able to get married and have a wife, and she's going to be an angel and perfect all the time. That's not going to happen.
Right.
You know, there's not one out there like that. Right. You know, right. My kids are going to be great. They're going to do everything right. That's not realistic. You know, so but the thing is what's so cool about where we're at now is we've lived through a lot of different tragedies, but we've seen the blessings through the tragedies over and over and over, and God brought us to a new place. And through every tragedy that we went through, I mean, from business to finances being tough, and then into disease, and then out of disease and into healing, and then through other sorts of tragedy, and my son being injured, you know, things.
Real quick, I don't want to skip over that, because as a dad, that's like your number one thing in life is your kids. There's no way around it. Like, and I say the number one thing, I don't mean over Lacey. I mean, that's what Lacey and I together prioritize is our kids. And so the people that won't know, Ryder, how old was Ryder when that?
Ryder's he was 9 at the time. He's 10 now.
God, that's crazy.
Yeah,
it seems like so long ago.
Yeah, it was just we're just outside of it. It was November 17th of 19. Is that right? Yeah, of 19. You know, he went crazy. I'll try to give a quick story, quick rundown of what happened. But Ryder was riding on an ATV trailer, and I was driving the ATV, and I had a lot of my nieces and nephews over, and my brother-in-law was riding with me. And Ryder was in the middle of this little trailer, and we're going to go drive down through the rock road through our ranch, and just like a little hayride is all it is. And he's sitting in the middle, and this ATV trailer's got like a rail around the side, and he decides to move from the middle to the side and sticks his legs out over the edge of the trailer.
So he's sitting under the rail, in essence, like holding on to it.
Yeah, like rail over his lap. And so going through I never knew that he had moved. And most all the other kids were kind of sitting on the back. Well, there wasn't room for him to sit on the back, but he wanted to, obviously.
Right. Well, on the back, if you fall off, you're just off.
Yeah, you're just left behind. Yeah. We don't want to be that. Think about that. Times could be coming. And so we go over this cattle guard. I drive over this cattle guard. It's kind of elevated, and his foot hits the cattle guard, and he's sitting in front of the trailer tire, and it sucks his foot up underneath the tire, drags it on the gravel, drags his shoe off, sock off, and just the whole inside of his foot just degloves the inside of his foot. So from there, you know, we wrap him up. We take him to the hospital. Going to the hospital, I always want to tell this part of the story is because this is where I start to see God work through the people involved. So going to the hospital, I'm sitting in the back seat, and I've been holding him with my brother-in-law's shirt wrapped around his foot, keeping pressure on his foot, and he's laid across the back seat. And we jump in the car with Casey, and she's driving us to the emergency room, and Ryder's saying... You know, it's just crazy. But he was saying, I'm so stupid. Why did I do that? He knew that he had made a mistake.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And he's in this pain. You know, he wasn't blaming on anybody else. It was him. He said, I made the mistake. And he's like, I'm so stupid for doing that. This is not okay. I'm not going to be okay. I'm not going to. And he keeps speaking these things over himself through that moment. And it was, you know, there's a lot going on in that moment.
Well, as a dad, you're seeing it from like not only the physical, but the overall wellness of your child. Like,
no, that's not true. And I've been telling him the whole way back to the house. You know, we had to make it back to the house, then get in the car with Casey. Like, you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
I want you to know you're going to be okay. Yeah. Don't let anything else take over your mind. You're going to be okay. Right. You're going to be all right. And so, anyways, we get on the road and we're driving. Casey's driving probably like 120. I mean, race car driver. And inside of this, Ryder starts saying these things, and it was like Casey just, hey, you're going to be okay. Do you understand? Do not speak those things over yourself. You are going to be healed. You're going to walk. You're going to run. You're going to have. I mean, she starts speaking truth.
Speaking into the future
over him, and it was just such a beautiful moment as a mom going through the emotions as well, you know, of what's going on. Yeah. Well, Ryder, we'll just skip the rest of it. Ryder is great. He can walk. He can run. He's riding horses and rope, and it's just beautiful, the healing that is taking place. But
so to be clear, just to recap, because I think this is hugely important. There are going to be seasons of suffering. Yes. Not everybody's going to go through Justin and Casey Davis levels of suffering. There are people that are going to live and they're going to die that will never understand what this is, and there will be people that go through it even to a greater degree.
Right.
But it will be present. And I think sometimes in a church, it's almost like we see the production of everybody else that's around us, and we don't realize maybe the stories that other people have survived or lived through. I mean, we had Jody on, you're here for that. You don't realize the reality of what someone's living through. Casey has been at this point, that's 2019. Casey has been battling through this now for going on, what is it, like 3 years? In the midst of all that, Ryder goes through what he's going through. There has to be a moment, because I think that's the nature of suffering, is it brings up like questions. Exactly what Ryder's saying. I'm so stupid. That sounds like me. When things are bad, I always blame myself. I always think of what I did that caused it. And I think that's the natural response to suffering. Is suffering hurts. You don't see the good that's going to come from it. So you start to questioning God, questioning your choices, questioning everything goes with it. Did it seem like it almost helped you understand your suffering, to see your son that you love going through it and yet speaking health in a way that God would speak? Am I making sense here? That like, as a dad, the health of his foot is important, but the health of him as a person is so much more important.
Yeah, on a spiritual level, I mean, in that moment, he's battling a spiritual battle right at that moment as we're driving down the road, and he's saying he's speaking these things over himself. And sometimes we can't even come to a place where we can speak the things that we need to speak over ourselves in the moment that we need it. And we need that community, that group, the other people around us to speak those things over us. In this case, it was Casey.
Fertile soil, though, like to be surrounded with people that keep you fed and nurtured and warm, but motivated. And it's almost like a cast. I mean, Casey, one of the things I know about Casey is she's got a structure to her personality. We've talked about this actually, that she's who you want in a moment of trauma. Her honesty is a healthy thing of like, you go here, you do the triage sort of a personality, and that part of soil that people probably, I know for me, I've underappreciated in my lifetime what community does for people.
Right.
Until you see it played out. Lacey and I've had this conversation this year of like, we have sort of almost in a sense alienated at times for the sake of a job or for the sake of a completion of a purpose or to get to where God's told us we would go, but like we just bury our heads in it. And like exactly what Casey said, the life that she was able to speak into Ryder's life, because the enemy will attack your children.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not like he waits till it's fair.
Right.
You know, if he can drag them down and discourage them and make it their fault and bring guilt and shame and all this stuff, for her to be able to speak life in that moment to a kid that, like you said, that's in a spiritual battle, that to me starts to maybe display community.
Absolutely.
What does it mean to be in community?
Absolutely. And through that process, I mean, it was beautiful. We did have a great community around us, and people from all over the country calling and loving, and sending gifts and just being there in support of us and Ryder, and coming right there in the hospital and living life with him right there. We were in the hospital for 30 days. I mean, that was life-changing. Well, in the moment of all of those things happening, Casey had just found out her cancer had came back. And so I remember laying in the hospital the day that Ryder had his major surgery. We're laying in ICU. We're supposed to be in there for like 5 days. And the moment he comes back from surgery, I remember taking a picture of Ryder and Casey. And Casey's sitting there with an ice pack on Ryder's, I think it was on his head. And he was asleep at this point still. And I remember thinking, God, how do we get here, and how do we get through this? You know, I think that it's important to come to a place where you're like, it's okay to sit here and say, I don't have control.
I'm out.
And that's what's so important. I don't have the control. I don't know how I got here. How am I going to get out of here? How are we going to move through this? What are you trying to do through this process? Or what are you going to do? You know, is maybe the better question.
Yeah.
And it was like that 30 days in the hospital was a really special time. You know, it was like, it was hard. There were tragedies. There were trials that I can't explain as a dad. Right. Sitting there with your wife has cancer. She's got terrible back pain. We're sleeping on a couch side by side together, and your son could lose his foot. You know, at moments in that deal, they're like, you know, he could lose his foot. But through that, there was so much hope. I remember we were in the meeting after the first debridement, the first day with the doctor.
And for people that don't understand what debridement is.
So debridement, they go in and they clean out all the debris that's in the foot. There was gravel in his foot, there was dirt in his foot, there was grass in his foot, there was, you know, and then all of a sudden infection immediately starts growing from all the dirty stuff in his foot. So we went through the first debridement, and the doctor set us down in a room, and I'm sitting there, Casey's sitting by my right side. And I mean, the doctor's like, you got to come in this room. They shut us in. And I'm like, this is getting real, right? Yeah. So Casey's sitting beside me, 2 doctors sitting across from us, and they tell us, so his foot doesn't look good. It's not looking good for his foot even surviving because of the amount of infection that's grown. This is after the second debridement, because it had time for the infection to grow. I said, if we can't get the infection under control by the next time, then we may have to take his foot off. And in that moment, Jordan, my hands, I could feel my pecs shaking, trembling. But it was so amazing, the peace that God had on my mind.
The peace that passes understanding.
I can't describe the way I felt. Physically, my body was out of control. My mind was speaking truth the whole time. Okay, I understand that. I know that God's bigger than that. Right. I believe in the healing over his body. His foot's going to be fine. And on top of that, God had Casey speaking verbally those things that I was sitting there thinking. She's speaking verbally to the doctor. Said, we understand. We appreciate y'all working hard. We appreciate the information y'all are giving us. Yeah. And we want you to know that he's going to be healed the next time you open that bandage up. There will be no infection. And she started speaking truth over Ryder's foot right there. And you could see the doctors, you know, they're like, okay, hey, we're gonna believe with you. You know, they were brought into that, you know. And I can say 3 days later when they opened it up, they said, it's amazing, all the infection's gone. Wow. Yeah. You know, just mind blowing, but at the same time, we believed in it.
Right.
You know, we come to a place, we've been through tragedies up to that point, and we've seen God move in those tragedies.
Yeah.
You know, we've seen loss. We've seen loss of friends, relationships, hardships. We've seen those things. We've had it great too.
Yeah.
You know, we've had great things happen. Blessings happen all through the process.
I had a guy tell me a story one time. he said he was praying for his dad for healing. And every time I hear this, here's what I go back to. It's just like you see things from your own perspective. He's praying for his dad, and his dad had cancer, but it had advanced to the point that it was kind of where they thought. And he was praying, and God told him, he said, I'm going to bring him home. And it's not a lack of faith. It's not a lack of belief. It was a peace, this peace that passes understanding, that says, I just want to let you in. I want you to clue in on it. Don't spend the rest of his time trying to change my mind. I want you to enjoy the peace that you've got.
Yeah.
And he describes it. This is what's so fascinating. He describes that process with the same confidence that you're describing your process, that when God speaks a direction, it's as though it's already done. You're not, again, and I think this is where you get into Jesus is the perfect theology. And about the time I think I've got it figured out, it somehow changes, deepens or whatever. But when people go through these struggles, I think there are times where they go, was it me? Did I not do it right? Or did I not do it enough? And there are times where God is going to bring, because if you'd got to pick 6 years ago, do you want to avoid this suffering or go through it? That's an easy one. Avoid it.
Yeah.
Let's go around it. Don't want it.
Sure. Yeah.
Yet somehow the miracle of that process is you're sitting here going, if this is what it does, if this is what it produces,
yeah,
I don't like it. I'm never going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
But the depth, the fertile soil, because nobody that you ever talk to from now till forever that you and Casey are in contact with can ever say, oh, you don't understand my struggle. You don't understand my suffering. You have become, not because you chose it, but because you got through it, you become this soil that's got depth, staying power, like Jody and Steve had said. You've got this staying power that allows you to be present during someone else's struggle. And you guys are still going through your struggle. And the amount of Jesus that someone can hold expands through suffering. The amount of Jesus that somebody that has a capacity to contain, it seems like it's the breaking and the breaking and the breaking that just kind of continues to expand that.
I was like a little child 6 years ago compared to where I feel like God's brought us. Like you just don't even have a clue.
Yeah.
And there's so much growth and tragedy, as long as you're willing to step into it and know that God's got purpose on the other side of every tragedy you go through. Not that he brings a tragedy to you, but he's definitely going to bring you through it.
Well, that's what I said about the roots. The shallow soil is kind of like the guy that's never been through a struggle and never really had hard times and is happy over it. Great. I'm glad I don't.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But the roots only go a certain depth. And it's not until those moments of just gut wrenching. I had a moment, I've talked about it publicly, but I had a moment where I sat down in a stall one night and I broke. And I don't break very often. I'm not really a freak out kind of a person, but I just from an emotional standpoint, I felt so disappointed by God, because I'm like, how could you know me and know who I am and know me the way that you have said that you know me and bring me to a place that feels so opposite of what I wanted in life, which I mean, I know that sounds selfish, but it was selfish.
Because that's all you can know at that moment is
that
what
was
you feel
the depth
like what
of
you
what I
want.
knew.
Yeah.
And so now what's funny is you look back on it now and you go, it's crazy that that's what broke me then, because it doesn't seem like a big deal now.
Right.
But
that's the thing. That's the difference of the growth from where you were to where you are now, and where God's bringing you to.
Yeah, and it was the breaking that caused the bottom to keep breaking out till I can grow deeper roots. And I compare my struggle to what you've been through, and there's almost, I don't even want to put this on record, but almost an element of envy of like, what would it feel like to be that deep? What would it feel like to go that far? What does Jesus look like from that angle? And I think if we're not careful, we get so concentrated on our safety and our comfort that we lose curiosity of like, but God, what could you do in me in this? What could you do in my life through that? And I love what Casey said. God, don't let me miss what you've got for me in this season.
Yeah. That there was a moment in the hospital with Casey and I. We were laying, it was the night that we got there. It was a long night. When we finally laid down, she whispered in my ear, she said, and I was broken at this moment. I was just laying there just like, man, I don't want my son to suffer. And God put his son in place to suffer for us, right? So I'm laying there like feeling the weight of my son is suffering. I know he's suffering, and it's not gonna be easy. It's gonna hurt. It's gonna be hard.
In front of him. Yeah.
And I'm laying there just in tears and crying, and Casey leans into me in her suffering at the same time and says, "Hey, everything's gonna be okay. God loves you. God loves Ryder. He's got Ryder. There's nothing that you could have done differently to prevent this from happening. I just want you to know, don't let this sit on your shoulders." And she's telling me, man, I was like, wow. God's using my wife that's still suffering too, right there laying beside me. I'm the only one not hurting in the room physically,
and she's helping me.
That's God. That's how much He loves us.
It says that He's close to the brokenhearted, which means no one wants suffering. But when it comes, there can be a sense of anticipation of there's an element to Jesus that is only visible from the perspective of suffering. Only in those.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
It's like there's a window that only opens to the west, and you can only get west enough to see it from suffering. But when you do, it's a beautiful depth of Jesus.
It is, because there's nothing else that's gonna make you feel good through any of that. There's nothing. There's no money in the world. There's no things in the world. I mean, even people come and say, "We're sorry." That doesn't really change anything.
It actually takes energy, because then you feel like you got to turn around, like you got to make them your focus, and you're like, nothing's gonna fix the thing. And in fact, you don't. There's no concept of recovery in a sense. It won't be what it was. Because once you go through an experience, it's like they say you can never step in the same river twice, because you're a different person in the different water, the stuff. And it feels like spiritually there are times where you're like, I'll never go back to the comfort, even if I went back to that location.
Yeah, I'm looking at life through a completely different set of lenses than 6 years ago, and I think that's so important. I would never want anybody else to go through the tragedies that we went through of those magnitudes, but there are people that go through a lot worse things than what we've went through too. But it's about your perspective of where God's bringing you to.
But Justin, there are people that go through less suffering than you went through that have turned and gone bitter, and it's destroyed. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what's so fascinating to me, that the same people who have that excuse to be mad at God, there are people that have been through worse that got closer to God. The suffering we can't always control, but we do get to control whether it makes us deeper and more enriched, or if we just seize up and miss what was available in that season, in that moment. And that part, I think, you don't have to surrender choice. You don't have to give up choice in those moments. Sometimes choice is literally, that's it. That's the only thing you got, is the choice to go, just, don't let me miss this.
Right. Casey says that a lot.
I learned something about myself, and please don't compare what I'm about to tell you with what I'm not saying it's the same, for the record, at all. How much time we got, Jacob? Okay, 5 more minutes. I had a tooth abscess one time. And if you've ever had a tooth abscess, I'm not comparing it. Shut up, Lacey. Shut up, Lacey. You know what I'm talking about. But in the moment, it's such an acute thing. It's an acute pain, and it's like your head is throbbing, and you just want to sleep. And I was up, and I was kind of doing like, "Oh Lord, I know you can heal me, yada yada." And it wasn't, but it hurt. I was just, what I really wanted is for the pain to go away, so I go back to sleep. So I'm praying, and pretty soon I start praying for other people, and then pretty soon I start and then all of a sudden my prayer changed in that moment, in the middle of the night, to God, if that's what it took for me to have this level of breakthrough, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. To get to that place where God brings you.
Yeah.
He allows you to go to places that you wouldn't normally go.
Yeah. Yeah. My prayer changed. I go, God, I'm so sorry that my comfort was the motivator. Don't take the pain away. And as crazy as it sounds, it's almost like I started praying, like, don't take the pain away until you've done in me what you wanted to do that I wasn't willing to do when I was asleep, or when I was comfortable. And it's a micro dose. It's just a small little dose of what God is capable of in those moments where it feels like life is just ripped apart. but I'll never forget it. It was meaningful enough that I never forget of like, God, even though this isn't what I would have chosen, there's a depth to you. Again, it's like I got a little glance, just a little glance out that window, but
yeah,
the fertility, if we're going back to the soil, that God will use all of that as fertilizer in the story. In the story of Justin and Casey, there are going to be people that are drawn to that because maybe they grew up with a prosperity version, I guess, and I'm not speaking against anything. I'm just saying a prosperity version that goes, I wasn't prepared that this was going to be part of that.
Right.
I got to get a hold of Justin. I got to go find Justin. I got to go find Casey because I can't get my bearings in the middle of the season.
You know, and that's what's so cool about what God can use those things to love on his people and to draw his people in. You know, all he wants is to be in relationship with us. You know, he just wants you to come back.
Yeah.
You know, that's his whole his sole purpose for people was about relationship, and he just wants to bring us back in. And you know, if we go through a little bit of suffering, in order for people to see the goodness of God and his heart through our suffering, that's beautiful. Like, I'll take it.
Yeah.
You know,
and I wish I remembered the address, but it talks about the birth of childbearing. The Bible says that the joy of the life that it produces instantly erases the memory of the suffering. It's almost like when you see the face, and when you see what it produced, you go, oh, then the process is worth it. Timothy Keller talked about a dream that he had one time where his family had been murdered in this dream, and it was very realistic. And he's going through all the pain, and he's experiencing the pain of what that would have been. And he wakes up. When he wakes up, he realizes it was all a dream. There's this relief, and he goes and hugs and kisses all his family. And he said, I loved them more having experienced the loss and then getting it back. It was like they were given back. And because I had experienced the loss, it was a deeper love and a richer appreciation. You know, like watching Ryder walk today means something that it wouldn't have meant 6 years ago.
There's so much more value in just the simple things.
Yeah, and that in the end, when this is all said and done, when life is over, this is a blip on a scale that we won't remember, but what it produces, that's eternal.
That'll be eternal. That's exactly right. You know, that's to see the lives saved. I mean, I've had the pleasure of walking alongside some great pastors and working with them at schools and speaking at different churches, giving our testimony, and just seeing our story affect people the way it has affected people. I'm like, Jesus, it makes me emotional just thinking about the hearts of people coming to a place where like, man, I relate, and now I see God's goodness. Yeah. I see, and now I understand it. Everybody has a different story. God's using everyone's stories as long as they're willing.
It's fertility. It starts and goes out. Yeah,
that's right. And it's just and that, hey, he's going to grow his kingdom from every angle that he can grow it.
Yeah.
And if we're able to be a part of it through a little bit of suffering, thank you, Jesus.
You know what's so interesting? We'll wrap up with this. What's so interesting is that so much of your life in the beginning was aimed towards team roping. Like so much of your story was that. You went on. If you guys don't know, made the national finals, got to rope with the greatest healer of all time.
Absolutely.
At the NFR.
The champ.
And here's why I mentioned that. We've been sitting here talking about what does the story of Justin Davis mean. And I have this moment of like, oh yeah, and by the way, like you had some cool stuff otherwise. But it's like, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Once you get through it and God does what he's doing, it's crazy to me that isn't even on the radar really of who you are. You said doing schools. I'm like, oh yeah, hey, by the way, that's an awesome story, but that's not the story. The story is that you guys have been winners through this whole process.
Yeah, we didn't always have tough times. We had great times. We were blessed financially, friends, family. I feel like one of the most blessed guys in the world. I still have every one of my grandparents. I mean, that's something to speak for. And nowadays, you don't really I don't know a lot of guys that have that, you know. But just to be able to go through and I lived out so much of my goals in my life in my younger years, and now going through in business, and we've been blessed. We've been totally blessed. You know,
that's crazy, and we've talked about the struggle, but the takeaway, and I know you well enough to know that when I talk to you, man, we're so blessed. Things are going so good. Things are going awesome. How's that? Well, that's hard. But other than that, we're so, and that to me is depth. That to me speaks to the character of depth, that I'm okay it includes suffering, but it's not defined by suffering. I'm okay outside of that suffering.
Yeah. You know, you don't want to get caught in a place where we could have very well got caught. Well, oh, poor us. You know, we had this go wrong and that go wrong and that go wrong. Well, you know, we set with the mentality of, hey, God's going to bring us. He brings us, and we were brought to it. God's going to bring us through it, and He's going to be glorified through the process. And I love the moment that Casey told me. I didn't like the moment she told me that she had cancer the first time, but I loved her heart in that moment. She's like, I just do not want to miss what God has and what He's going to do through this process. That's only that kind of peace only comes from God.
Yeah. Well, for you guys that don't know, Justin and Casey have been part of the Shiloh thing now for a little while, and I just can't tell you thank you enough for making the time to do this. We are going to get to rope here in a minute, but to be able to come up and get to hear that expressed from your perspective, it's a good stopping point.
And thanks. I'm so thankful for getting to come and be a part, and I love what you guys are doing. You know, this world is crazy. And it's going to take people that are willing to be just a little bit crazy. And I'm thankful. I'm thankful to be just a minor part of it. Love you.
Love you back.
He's like, can't say that.